welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, I'm doing another what I read in February color and chat. I am doing a voiceover. This is my first voiceover. I hope everything sounds okay. Before I jump into talking about all the books that I read in February, I am coloring a page out of Anime Coloring Book 1 and 2. I have a haul video coming up that should be uploaded after this video shortly, that I will talk more about this book. If you're interested, I will have it linked down below. It was sent to me for review, and like I said, I'll talk more about it in the haul video. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into everything that I was able to read last month. I read a total of 14 books, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about them in order. I started off with a bang in February. I read Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This was absolutely amazing. I wrote in my review, you know it's a good book when you hug it as soon as you finish it. I enjoyed this so much. Colleen Hoover writes amazing romance books that are very easily accessible, easy to read, fast-paced, entertaining books. They're not too spicy. They're just very cutesy. Sometimes they deal with a lot of other outside elements other than just your typical contemporary romance. This one is very much the same of that. The story is very gripping. It's a huge page turner. I don't want to say too much about this. I will say it is a dual point of view. You have a mom's perspective and her 16-year-old daughter's perspective. You have two separate romances that you're reading about, two separate experiences, how both of these women are coping with what happens in this story. Like I said, it is such an incredible story. I think that you guys will love this one. If you've read any of Colleen Hoover's books before, definitely pick up Regretting You. Again, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I think you should go into it blind. Don't read the synopsis on the back. They always give away too much. All right, next I read How to Make Friends with the Dark by Kathleen Glasgow. I gave this 3.5 stars. So this book follows a very young girl grieving with the death of her mother. It is not just a story about grief, but a lot of other things. It has a lot of really good conversations about the system and being, in the foster care, and of course, grief. I put off reading this book for quite a while. This book was or has been on my TBR since the beginning of last year, and I knew that it was a story about a girl losing her mom, and that's a topic that I would rather avoid. I usually don't read books to be sad. I know some people love sad stories. I typically don't. I don't want to think about sad things or read about sad things, but I figured that this was time. Side tangent on how I pick books to read. I usually try to go to the back of my TBR instead of always reading the books at the top of my TBR. So like I said, this one had been on it since the beginning of last year, and it was up next. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But I have to say I didn't find this nearly as sad or, overwhelming as I thought it was going to be. And I think that was because the character was so young. Obviously, what she experienced losing her mom would be completely different than any experience that I would ever have myself. So I didn't find it nearly as relatable, which might have taken away from the story for me somewhat. But I do think that if you read this book as a young person, it would hit a little harder for you. But once again, this story doesn't just deal with the loss of a loved one. It deals with so many other things and has really good conversations. It's a very, very heavy story, though. Definitely keep that in mind. It still did make me cry, for sure. It was sad, but I liked it. I did listen to this on audio, and yeah, I gave this one 3.5 stars. So next I read The Queen of Nothing, which is the last and final book in the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. I gave Queen of Nothing 4 out of 5 stars. This was a very, very good wrap up to the series. It took it places I was definitely not expecting the story to go. It's very fast paced. You get into action rather quickly in this one, which I did enjoy. It's really not slow at all. I definitely enjoyed the progression of Jude and Carden once again in this one. I definitely could do an entire adult romance with Jude and Carden as our leads. I mean, I loved their dynamic. I loved them as characters. I have nothing more really to add than I did with The Wicked King. Again, the world is really great. The magic is amazing. Jude as a character is really, really stunning. I just really loved her character arc and where she ended up going at the end and the decisions that she made. And I overall was really happy with how the series ended. I still think The Wicked King is my favorite in the series. But I did really enjoy, like I said, how Holly Black wrapped up the whole series. And I was very content with it being over. So The Queen of Nothing, I did read. I got this one from the library. I read it, and again, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was Crave by Tracy Wolff, and this is a reread for me. I started this series last year, and I read all 3 books, and the 4th book released in February, so I wanted to do a fresh reread, but this time listen to the audiobooks. Since they are rather long books, I didn't really have the time to devote to actually physically read them, so I went ahead and picked up the audiobooks from the Libby app, and Crave was first up. And I did give this one 4 stars out of 5. I kept the same rating that I gave it last year. If you haven't heard what this story is about, it's very hard to explain. Think a more modern Twilight, but not as good. It is about vampires, and she is in kind of this like paranormal academy, but she's human. Our main character is human, and she doesn't really know what's going on. She's kind of, placing all of these weird events together to make sense of who all these kids that she's going to school really are. There's romance, there's action. It's a very action-packed book. I would say if you're looking for a very silly, goofy time, read Crave. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be super serious, because it's not. I personally did not enjoy the audiobooks whatsoever. If you are going to pick up this series, definitely think about doing the physical read. The audiobook narration isn't great, and you're already reading a kind of cringy story. The writing, like I said, just isn't great. On top of the bad narration, it doesn't make for a great mix. Overall, though, I personally am a fan of the Crave series. It's just my kind of trash. I don't know what else to say. I know that it's bad, but I still really like it. I think it's a fun feel-good time. So yeah, that was a reread for me. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book is Mary Inkmas by Talia Hibbert. I read this on my Kindle. I got it from my library though. And this is kind of like a short novella romance that takes place during Christmas time. It really has nothing to do with Christmas, besides, like I said, that's the time of the year that it takes place in. We have our like quirky, weird main character, she's different, and our broody, sexy, tattooed, muscular man as our lead romance. She meets him at the coffee shop she works at, and she ends up losing her job, and he ends up giving her a job at the tattoo shop that he works at. And their romance blossoms from there. It's, like I said, a pretty short little novella story. I really liked it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Talia Hibbert also writes the Brown Sister trilogy, so Chloe Life, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, if you've read that. Her writing's really good. I really enjoy her storytelling. I really enjoy her romance writing as well. Mary Inkmas was really fun for me to read. I have nothing bad to say about it. I liked our male main character. I enjoyed our female main character. I thought that their chemistry worked. It was a really nice setting. I enjoyed like the tattoo shop setting. That was fun to read about. And overall, yeah, it was a good time. The next book I read was The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This was actually one of my 22 in 22, so one of the top books I wanted to read or get to this year. This had been on my TBR all of last year. So I did read this on audio, which I think was a really big mistake. Shadow of the Gods, geez, I honestly, I don't even know if I can give you a synopsis on this one. It was uh, a Viking fantasy. I really can't give you much more than that. I mean, there's lots of brutal, action-packed fight scenes. There's dragons, there's magic, there's witches, there's all sorts of fun things that sound amazing to me. It gave me Lord of the Rings vibes, which is why I wanted to read it. Audio was just not it. This was a high fantasy book that also is a very new genre for me, and listening to it in audio just did not work out. I am kind of sad. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars, even though I do think it deserved more, because I do think it was a really cool story. I just didn't grasp any of it listening to it on audio. It was just too much to listen and be distracted. I think I definitely should have given this all of my attention and read this in a physical book. I still think that it was really exciting. I enjoyed the battle scenes. I think the characters were cool. I liked the writing for the most part. But yeah, I think that I would definitely want to reread this at some point if I ever got a chance to. I know that there's a sequel, so maybe down the line, if I ever want to pick up the sequel, I'll just go ahead and give the first one a physical read. I think that if high fantasy, Lord of the Rings, like I said, it's more like Viking style. If any of that, dragons, that kind of thing sounds cool, I would pick this up or recommend this to you. I unfortunately just can't tell you a gosh darn thing about it. So if take it by the cover. If the cover looks cool, add it to your TBR. Next, I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. What to say about this? This follows 2 women who meet in a kind of on Craigslist type thing. One of them is trying to sell something. The other woman reaches out saying she wants to buy it. They end up deciding that they want to email each other. Emailing turns into logging onto like instant messenger and talking that way. And they kind of develop this very, very, very interesting relationship. It is classified as adult horror. It is not scary horror. It is not like give you nightmares horror. It is definitely body horror, gross horror. Not really my cup of tea. Go into it knowing that when you hear that it's horror, it's just kind of gross horror. I don't know what I read once I finished this. I did read it on the Kindle or ebook from the library. It was very short, I think like less than 200 pages, so it's very quick to get through. It's written, like I said, through like email style, back and forth chat logs. Very interesting, but very gross, and I don't really have anything to say. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. It just really wasn't my cup of tea. I just didn't get it. I didn't find it interesting. I found it interesting, but not in a positive way. It was just kind of one of those like, what did I just read moments after I finished it, and why did I spend my time reading it? But at least I've read it now, I guess. If I ever bump into anyone who's also read it, I can be like, I read that too. Next, I have A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. This one is so disappointing. I was so excited to read this book. I have loved every other Shay Earnshaw book I've read, which is 2 others. They've been both amazing books. But this one I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. This is Shay's newest release. It is her first adult novel. I believe the past 2 have been YA. I would classify History of Wild Places as like an adult mystery / thriller. This follows, basically you're trying to discover why or where this woman who went missing 5 years prior, where she went or if she has died. You end up finding yourself in this multi-point of view taking place in this forest where you have these very, very, very superstitious group of people, and you're kind of unraveling this tangled web of lies that interweave with this missing woman. And it sounded really cool. It sounded awesome. Don't get me wrong. The writing in this, a 10 out of 10. Shea Earnshaw's writing is so good. It is so atmospheric. It's so beautiful. I love the way she tells stories. I did really enjoy that aspect of it, of not really knowing where you were in time in this story. Were you past, were you present, were you future? It was all so easily interwoven. I did kind of hate the ending. I just didn't love where it went. It was just so lackluster for me. It just didn't wrap up the way I was hoping. It kind of just left a lot to be desired for me. I did find parts of the books to be pretty slow, kind of dragged out. Nothing was really happening. I wouldn't say it's a very fast-paced book. I think that the writing is what really keeps you going, the way the story is told. I did really, really, really enjoy our main character, or one of our main characters, Bee. I think that her storyline was epic. I think that she was amazing. She was a joy to read about. But yeah, 3 out of 5 stars, kind of a big disappointment. I was so excited for this one. I'm so glad I read it. I did pick this up from my library, so I physically read this one, and I did enjoy it, just not as much as I was hoping. It was just a letdown compared to the previous 2 books that I've read by Shea Earnshaw. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for this one. Next book I read was Crush, which is the second book in the CRAVE series by Tracy Wolff. First time I read this, I gave it 3 stars. I ended up knocking it down to 2.5 stars after listening to it on audio for my reread. Not much to say. I found this book kind of annoying. Our main character is so infuriating. Like I said, the audiobook is just really hard to listen to, especially when what's happening in the story is quite aggravating, which I found this to just be very repetitive. There's just so much repetitive dialogue. Our main character makes very stupid decisions, in my personal opinion. Obviously, it depends what team you're on. If you've read it, you know. Yeah, I just kind of ended up listening to this on 3 times speed because I was just irritated and I wanted it to be over. I just wanted to get to the 3rd book because the 2nd book, like I said, is just kind of really, really frustrating. There's just too much repetitiveness. The awesome things in this book don't get enough time spent on them. I think that there's a lot of really cool, like family. She found family, and you don't really get enough of those scenes, and enough of like the awesome things that they're doing. Because there are quite a bit of epic exploration, action-packed scenes in this one, but they're just not spent enough time, and we just get too much of the same annoying Grace action in this. So 2.5 stars. If you want to just skip Crush altogether and read the synopsis, I mean, or maybe just read the last third of the book, I think you'd be fine, just fine. Next book is The Lost Sisters, which is a little short novella. It's book 1.5 in the Folk of the Air series. So there are 3 main books in that series, which is the Cruel Prince series, and then you have this 1.5. So I ended up reading this after I completed the series, but I do recommend reading this where it should be read, 1.5, so between book 1 and book 2. For whatever reason, I just didn't. I did listen to this on audio. It was very short. It was only a few hours, I think like less than 3 hours. So this is a letter written to Jude from her twin sister Taryn, kind of explaining the events that took place in the first book, kind of justifying why she did what she did, kind of giving you a little deeper dive into Taryn's character and explaining her emotionally, how she's thinking, how she feels about Jude, how she feels about Carden, how she feels about Locke, all of those characters. I still found Taryn to be irritating even after reading this. I think, like I said, I wish I would have read it where it was supposed to have been read, because reading it after the whole series was over was kind of just like, okay, well, that's cool. I still feel how I feel. Obviously, I've read all the books about in the series already, so it didn't really impact my feelings of her throughout the rest of the series. So again, recommend reading it where it was supposed to be read, but I do think that it was a nice addition to the story. It was interesting to see Taryn's side of things, because trust me, while you're reading book 1, you are very, very, very confused as to what the heck and why. And yeah, this book explains. So definitely read this after book 1. I enjoyed it though. It was, like I said, added to the story. I got more of the story, so what's not to like? I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This follows a human girl who has a talent for painting portraits. So she is commissioned by people in the Fae realm to paint their pictures. While humans are not allowed in the Fae realm, all of the Fae have to come to her to do sittings so she can paint them. And she finds herself painting a portrait of a Fae prince who ends up kind of sweeping her off her feet and taking her on this journey into the forbidden Fae realm, and things happen. If you're a fan of the Cruel Prince series, I highly recommend Enchantment of Ravens. It is very similar. It is a standalone, which is nice if you don't want to get, yourself wrapped up into any type of series. This is just a quick, easy standalone. I listened to this on audio. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. This was really sweet, really cute. Not as enjoyable as The Cruel Prince, but very, very much so the same vibes. That's why I think anyone who's a fan of The Cruel Prince will definitely enjoy this. Like I said, she's a human girl swept away by a Fae prince. They get into mischief. She has to figure out her way, how to survive as a human who wants to stay a human in a world full of Fae people. It was a very quick book. And yeah, again, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I have is Raybearer by Jordan Ifuko. So this follows our main character, Tarsay, who is given this kind of impossible magical task to kill the future emperor of the empire. And the way she has to do that, she has to gain his trust and get picked to be on this Council of 11. And then once she gets his trust, she is supposed to kill him. So we follow her from early childhood all the way up until adulthood on this seemingly impossible task. Tarsay does not want to be used by her mother. She wants to make her own decisions, and she wants family more than anything, and joining this Council of 11 gives her exactly that. I found this to be so good. So good. I gave Raybearer 4 out of 5 stars. I typically don't enjoy books with a lot of political intrigue where pretty much the whole plot is political, and this book definitely is that, but I just can't say, the world was so good. I loved the magic system. I enjoyed the writing from the very beginning. It almost felt like a Disney story. Obviously it gets a little dark for Disney, but I could definitely imagine this story retold as a Disney movie. I just really enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed Tarsay's journey of finding family and love and trust and strength within herself. This was a really good book. I already have the second book waiting to be read. I'll be reading that in March. It is a duology. I can't say enough good things about Raybearer. Again, the world was just super magical and enjoyable to read about. I highly recommend Raybearer. And yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. So this is the second book in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. This was a 5 out of 5 stars. Guys, this was my favorite book that I read in February by a landslide. This book was pure perfection. I devoured this book. I simply loved it. It was amazing. Wrath, 10 out of 10. I would marry him. Just such an amazing character growth in this book from the first one. Kingdom of the Wicked was good, but oh my, Kingdom of the Curse blew it out of the water. I loved the romance in this book. This was pure perfection. I've read a lot of romance books. Quite a few romance books at this point, but something about this one just really did it for me. I loved the spice in this. I loved their chemistry. I just loved their scenes together. Amelia and Wrath are our 2 main characters in this, and while the plot honestly doesn't really progress a whole lot from the first book, you do get loads and loads of character development and romance in this one. And the setting, it's gothic, it's medieval castles, there's gorgeous gown descriptions. It's just, the whole vibe of this book is everything for me. Absolutely loved it. If you haven't picked up Kingdom of the Wicked yet, I highly recommend it, if nothing else, to get you to read Kingdom of the Cursed. So again, 5 out of 5 stars. I can't recommend this book enough. So the last book I read in February was Covet, which is the third book in the CRAVE series by Tracy Wolff. I did give this one 3 out of 5 stars. Not much to add. I enjoyed my reread, minus having listened to it on audio. Again, I just really don't recommend the audiobooks for these at all. The story does get better from Crush into Covet. The story picks up quite a bit. Lots of chaos. This book is just pure chaos. I just really enjoyed the story, though. It's wacky and fun, and I don't know what to say without giving too much away. It's hard to talk about books in a series without talking about, you know, like giving away what happens in the previous book. So there's unless you've read it, you know. But I did enjoy rereading and getting excited for the next book. So I'll definitely be reading Court, which is the 4th book in March, and I'm happy to, because the way Covet ends is definitely a cliffhanger. All of these books end on huge cliffhangers. So if you have the patience to wait until like the whole series is finished, I would highly recommend it, because the cliffhangers definitely get you. But 3 out of 5 stars to Covet, and that rounds out all of the books that I read in February. So I really hope you enjoyed listening to me chit-chat about all of the books that I read, and I hope you enjoyed that little coloring session that we just shared. I just want to throw this clip in at the end showing you guys my reading journal. I love my reading journal, and I enjoy getting to share it with you guys. So I just wanted to show you how February's spread ended up turning out. I think I sneak peeked it at the end of last video, and I'll of course sneak peek March's as well. I read everything on my TBR except for one book. That's how I did with reading. I read almost every single day, if not every day. No, I had 2 days I didn't read. One day I didn't read. I don't know. This was how I kept track of the books that I read. This came out really cute. I haven't filled out my February fave, but you guys know it was Kingdom of the Cursed for sure. These are all the stats that I had for February, and this is my spread for March. I'll give you a quick flip through. I think it came out super cute. So yeah, I just wanted, of course, to share with you guys my journal. I love my reading journal. I highly recommend, if you guys read, you should totally do one too. Huge thank you if you made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate you guys who like hearing me talk about books, and if you're interested in more book content that's more like up to date throughout the month, definitely follow me on Instagram. I post updates all the time with what I'm reading. I do mini reviews over on my Instagram. It's definitely my outlet that I use the most for just talking and gushing about the books that I'm reading. But I'm really excited that you guys are interested in this monthly video as well. So huge thank you if you made it to the end of this. Definitely leave the book emoji, or just say book emoji, in the comments if you did make it to the end of this one. You guys are amazing. I appreciate it so much. If you want to stay tuned for more coloring book content and these types of videos in the future, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!